What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about what's next for God of War. Now, this is an incredibly difficult topic to even talk about. I wanted to try to tease it on Twitter and whatnot, but by saying God of War, that even implies something. So for the purposes of this video, obviously, this is going to be a very spoiler-heavy thing. We got to more specifically talk about the mural at the end, Kratos, Atreus, all that stuff. But I also want to take a few steps back and talk about, like, the marketing, the idea of God of War in general, what that means for money-wise, for Sony. So there's a couple different angles I want to talk about. And, let's start there. So the idea of God of War. So when you say, well, what's going to happen in the next God of War game, you're implying Kratos, right? You have to be implying Kratos because he is the God of War. So the question is, will we actually get more literal God of War games with Kratos? My short answer, before we kind of go into the ending, is yes. I do think there'll be more. I do want there to be more. And I feel like there's a couple ways they can go. Also, from, again, the money perspective of it, I could easily see a spin-off or even a full-on, full-scale game with Atreus. I think they obviously built up to that. I think it would be silly of them not to do it based off what they did do in God of War 2018 and God of War Ragnarok. I do think Atreus generally is the future of the franchise. Yet again, when you say franchise, you have to change that word. You can't say war, God of. You have to put it a blank. It could be God of mischief. It could be God of something. And that, I guess it's cheating, but the reason I wanted to kind of start there was because it's God of War, the franchise name, the game franchise that's been around for almost 20 years is called God of War. So to, like Uncharted, when you retire Nathan Drake, although he is so synonymous with Uncharted, the name of the game is Uncharted. It's not Nathan Drake. It's Uncharted. Now, you could argue like the subtitles and even some of the collections they've done. Then you start to introduce his name. That's for sure. But the game's name is Uncharted. And as proven with Lost Legacy, you don't necessarily need him. You can have other characters come in. Now, they're established characters, but you could have other characters come in. If you make future God of War games, you have to include Kratos because the name implies he's in it. So that's the one thing. And from money, it's such a big money maker. I don't know if they would ever actually let go of whether it's a good idea to let it go and retire it, or whether they, you would want them to continue it. I don't know if they could ever let it go because of the money, purposes. Just like Uncharted will never be let go, but you can make those without Nate. You can't do it necessarily for God of War. All right, so you got that. Then you have the actual, the physical ending. You can see with our own two eyes, and boy, oh boy, it's good. Say what you want about the game, positives, negatives, whatever. I adore this ending so freaking much, from an emotional level to really everything else. But a couple things to talk about, right? So clearly, Atreus is being sent off on his own path, and him and Angrboda could obviously be a thing. So that's why I wonder if you do another game. Now, could you do it through DLC, right? This kind of hunt for giants that Atreus is going on. Would that work as DLC? I feel like that would be a massive DLC because you can have a lot of other questions and answers in that storyline. To me, it would make more sense to make it a full-on game. Now, do I think that that's necessarily the right decision? Would it sell better? Would it be better received? I don't know. But I do think in terms of the story and how it was played out in this game, I do think making Atreus' next adventure, not DLC, and maybe not even a spin-off game. Now, you could argue that. In my opinion, my first gut reaction when I saw that ending was, firstly, oh my God, you ended Kratos, but you didn't kill him, but you could still have him, but it really looks like this is the natural end to his character. I thought all those things, but I also thought, if they were trying to copy Insomniac with Spider-Man, they did a hell of a job, because I really do see parallel. Whether they want to take that, again, if it's the right decision or whatever, if they want to take that or not, I think this lines up so closely to Spider-Man, and what I mean by that is God of War is Spider-Man, and then Miles Morales is Atreus' Adventures, the spin-off game. You could easily do that. Atreus can go on his giant search. That's a spin-off game in 2-3 years. And then you get a God of War game, and Atreus comes back, and Kratos and Atreus goes on to future adventures. I mean, you could do that. Now, the issue is, again, it really is a natural end, and I really am. I mean, maybe you can tell by my voice or my constant stuttering, which actually is pretty normal to me, but, Kratos really was ended so well, and so it just perfectly in a way where I feel like if you're gonna do more God of War games, boy, you better give a good reason, right? Like, I want to see them go to Egypt. I want to see them go to all these other mythologies if possible. And boy, they're hinted at. We'll talk about the Mural, right? We're getting there. But I mean, he's kind of done, and he had his adventure and with Atreus and all this stuff, and it makes a lot of sense to end him here. So I just kind of want to keep throwing that out. Now, here's the deal. When you look at the Mural, and I want to cite a really awesome conversation I had in the comments of my review with Rich, and we went back and forth for a while, and I had seen this. I don't actually know if it was the same guy, and he posted it on another channel, but when I was watching other, like, ending explained-ish kind of videos, I saw people talk about the Celtic mythology, okay? So obviously, like, Egypt was heavily hinted at in 2018, and really not at all, you know, in this game, right? If you look at that Mural, and there are a couple things to point out, whether you think it's Celtic specifically or something else. If you look at the paintings, right, it's very different than any of the other visual style like, that we've seen in any of those murals. Go back to 2018, look at any of the ones we see in this one. It's not drawn. The people worshiping Kratos, and I'm kind of with most people, I think, online. I think that's a statue of him. It wouldn't make sense for that to be him because he's so much, and because scale matters. And all of those pictures, I'll call them pictures for like the ease of conversation. In all of them, they're drawn to scale. Kratos is the same size, right? He's a little bit taller than Atreus, but he's short. He's smaller because, you know, of the scope that they're trying to do. So when you see that last mural, that last, you know, picture of it, he's so gigantic, and he's glowing. I mean, he's literally gold. Now, you could look at that as maybe like the ashes, it kind of like wiped off of his body. I mean, that's a cool way of thinking about it for sure, but I think it's a gold statue, kind of like Tyr. I think it's just a statue that people are worshiping. And again, because you see, you know, just, I guess, normal mortals, let's call them, right? Just run-of-the-mill Joes, you know, worshiping him. But you also see what seems to be a giant, right? That's kind of the kicker. And that's where people, I think, are a little, you know, it's debatable now, right? Because if that's a giant on the right, it obviously does heavily imply that he's being worshipped for his work, you know, the contributions he put in Ragnarok. And again, that is another natural conclusion where that's the end of his, well, it seems like that'd be the end of his story. That's the last, you know, kind of prediction or future sight of what he's going to do is that. Now, also, a statue implies you're gone, most likely, right? So the statue implies he's dead at that time. They build him a monument, and they worship him as, again, like the savior, the guy who figured out Ragnarok and saved all of these realms, which implies you're staying in the Norse mythology, which implies Kratos eventually just dies. Those are all important things to remember, but, you know, the giant thing, I mean, it could be anything. It doesn't necessarily have to be a giant from the Norse mythology, right? Those are taking a couple extra steps. And then the people, they really are drawn, and people have pointed this out, stylistically, is very different than anything else. So that last one may not be from the same realm. Now, my conversation with Rich here, and he mentions the art style, and he says there's a very zoomed-in Celtic symbol on the panel, and Mimir openly admits in dialogue he's from a different mythology in the game, not in real myth, and what he describes as Celtic. So here's hoping. And the thing I noticed, and I really don't know how I'm supposed to look this up, so I will give it to you guys. Maybe you can figure it out. They hang on Kratos for so long, and I think one of the products of doing that is when he puts his hand, like when he's kind of like tearing up and, you know, he's kind of realizing, well, I think he always kind of knew, but like he sees what he's kind of always wanted, right? People actually, you know, doing this, something Odin teased him for in the, you know, middle parts of the game. But where he puts his hand, there's like I don't know if it's like a snake thing, but there's a symbol around his ankle. It's around the statue of Kratos in that picture, and it's close to where he puts his hand. And there's an icon symbol, whatever you want to call it, and I stared at that thing more than I stared at Kratos kind of tearing up. I looked at that symbol, and I was like, that's got to mean something, right? Like, why is that there? Why are they hanging it? Now, again, why are they hanging on it for so long? They're kind of hanging on Kratos, and it's just in the frame. It doesn't necessarily mean they're focusing on it. Maybe that's a Celtic thing, too, and that kind of helps the idea. I mean, here's really it boiled down. If it's the Norse mythology, then it really is difficult, to plan a future. Now, I guess there's still ways around it because, again, he may not die for however many hundreds or however many years he still has left alive. So could he go to other places and come back? Sure, there's a lot of wiggle room there. And then on the flip side of things, if the statue isn't even him in the Norse realm, if that statue and the people worshiping him aren't from there, then, well, he has to, that is a definitive, that's a more definitive thing where he would have to go somewhere else. So there's a couple different ways of looking at it. And I even saw one theory where it was like, it's kind of all mythologies worshiping him, where he's like the savior of everything. Now, well, that would be tough because I don't know if Greece and, the population there, I don't know how much they generally like him. So he would have to have some fixing up to do over there. But I mean, that's possible too. I have seen that theory going around that it's like everybody. And maybe it's why there's a giant. So the giant's from the Norse, but then the civilians, the normal people, the mortals, they're from somewhere else. So it's kind of it's a way of showing everybody instead of just one mythology. I mean, that could work. So here's the deal. It makes so much sense to do obviously more with Atreus. It's a part of me that I guess doesn't want to let things go. That's like a trait of mine, for better or for worse. It could be an issue, but I don't want to see Kratos end. I mean, I was hesitant, I guess, even with Nathan Drake, but again, with Nate, he is mortal. You can imagine it from the story. Eventually, you do kind of run your course. And I guess that last part, running your course, that can happen with Kratos too. I mean, doing it too much. Look, but I mean, he's been on such a role and he's had such a character shift where, I mean, I've always liked him. I always thought he had depth. But obviously in 2018 and now Ragnarok, he's become almost a completely new person. He's not, but he's really added some layers to himself, and he's so good. And do you end it here? I mean, in a way, yeah, you kind of, why not go out on top? I would like to see more from him, but I would say this, combining this with what we've heard from Santa Monica, that there's basically multiple games in development that they're working on, not necessarily God of War related, but just in general, I'd be shocked if they didn't go at least one kind of game with Atreus. And if that's a side game, like a spin-off, like a Miles Morales, it's that. And I guess spin-off meaning he's the lead character, but it's a 5 to 10 hour thing. It's shorter. I mean, maybe you could fly as DLC in a way, but they're going to make it its full-on game, right? I mean, they could easily do that. Or you give the next God of War game, you change war into whatever, and then it's Atreus' story. Maybe Kratos comes in and out. But I don't know. I would like to see more actual God of War games. Kratos is the main character. You could have Atreus. You don't have to have Atreus. And Kratos can travel to other realms. You got to give him a reason, though, because a big part of his story is that he's done. And he's not going to just go into other mythologies to destroy and kill all the gods and just, wreck everything for no reason. Like he never actually has done that in the first place, right? He always has a reason for doing it, whether it's good or bad. He's always had a reason. So I can't imagine him going to Egypt and just slaughtering just for fun, just for another game, just to have another game. There's no way. There's got to be a reason why he would do something like that. And if they can think of it, then I'm all for it. So let me know, guys. Let me know what you think. What is the future of these God of War games? Make sure you guys are subscribed. Turn the bell on. I do have more God of War videos planned. And, if this video kind of pops off or if there's an interesting discussion to be had here, I can do more theories for sure as well. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one.